Good morning, class. Moving on to lesson 6.7. We're taking a look at graphing linear equations. We graphed inequalities yesterday or the last lesson. We're going to continue moving forward here. This is where we talk about quadrants and using the standard kind of graph looking paper, Cartesian planes. And we'll talk a bit about how we can utilize those and different areas that we use in that regard. We're going to be solving for two different variables for each of these and using that information to create a line for most part. Let's take a look at it. Starting off with ordered pairs, you will have some review, hopefully it's review, about plotting ordered pairs on a graph like this. Letter A here, -2. The first value is the x value, and then +4. The second value is the y value. So -2, 4 is going to be 2 to the left of the 0 and 4 up from the 0. So it should be right about there. Plot B, 3, -4. So we're going 3 to the right and then 4 down. So right there. 6, 0. So we're going 6 positive, and 0 means we're staying on that y-axis. And then for letter D, we're going 0 left and right and 3 up. Plot right there. So you can see that using this plane, you'll be plotting points. When you do this on the homework, make sure you're clear on what point it is. You can use multiple colors if you like, or just be sure you're writing the number very, very neatly on your graph. Moving on. Graphing lines. So in order to graph lines, we can use these ordered pairs and solve for y. This is the standard format for a line. Y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. We're looking at this here. We see y equals 2x minus 4. The best way to grab a couple points is to put numbers in for x. 0, 1, 2 is a good starting point. I like to do -1 and -2 as well. And once we plug those numbers in place of the x, this first example here, y equals 2 times 0 minus 4, and that's going to be -4. Y equals 2 times 1 minus 4. Well, 2 times 1 is 2. Minus 4 is -2. And lastly, y equals 2 times 2 minus 4. Well, 2 times 2 is 4 minus 4 is 0. We will then plot those points. First point being 0, -4, then 1, -2, then 2, 0. And you can see these three dots will eventually form a line. We'll connect those dots to finish that line off. So this is the general method we're using for graphing these linear equations. Let's talk about slope. Slope is the ratio of the vertical change to the horizontal change for any 2 points in a line. So if you have 2 points in a line, you can find the slope between them. How we do this is we take a look at the vertical change. We call this the rise. And we divide it by the horizontal change. We call this the run. So you can think rise over run. Rise divided by run. For ordered pairs x1, y1 and x2, y2, m, which is what we use for the slope, can be found by taking y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we're finding the difference of these 2 points, and we find the second point, subtract the first point, and we can solve for this line. Finding slope using that same formula, we have -1, -3 and 1, 5. So we'll plug it into what we saw earlier, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So y2 is 5 minus y1 is -3. x2 is 1 minus y1 is -1. So we can solve for this. This becomes 5 plus 3 over 1 plus 1, which solves down to 8 over 2, which is 4. So the slope, the m, for these 2 points is 4. As we look at slope, we have a couple ways to describe slope. It can be either an uphill or positive slope. It can be a downhill or a negative slope. We can have no slope. This is when slope equals 0. We have a horizontal line. And the last one there is when the slope is a vertical line. We call this undefined. There is no slope, so it's undefined. Let's continue. Using the slope-intercept form of y equals mx plus b, we can use this when use when y is by itself. B is going to be equal to the y-intercept. So that's the place where it's going to cross the line down here. 0, -4 is the y-intercept for this particular line. M is equal to the slope. Slope is the rise over the run. You can see the rise in this graph is 4. The run is 3. So 4 over 3, that's going to be our slope. And so to write this formula out using the slope-intercept form, it is going to be y equals 4/3 x minus 4. The 4/3 is the slope, rise over run, 4 over 3. And minus 4 is our y-intercept. The y-intercept intercepts the y down here at -4. So using those two pieces of information, we can graph lines with just that data. Looking at the slope, you can see that the y-intercept is +1. So there will be a dot. You can start with a dot at 0, 1. And the slope is -3. And -3 is, you can think of that as 3 over 1. So the rise over run is 3 and -1. So we start with our dot here at the y-intercept. And our rise and run, since we have a negative, we're actually have a negative slope. We're going to move over, we're going to go down 3 and over 1 to get to that point. We can continue that method and then draw a line to connect those. So this is how we graph lines using that standard y equals mx plus b format. Then our normal other form we have is ax plus by equals c. When x and y are on the same side, we can graph this by finding the x and the y-intercepts. So we can graph lines just by knowing the x and y-intercepts. To do that, we have to put in zeros. We can find the x-intercept by plugging in 0 for y. So if I put in a 0 in place of y and solve this, it basically takes out whatever the modifier is in front of the y, and we get what x is going to be. And the y-intercept is the same. We just plug in a 0 for x. Let's see an example here. If you want to graph the line 2x plus 3y equals 6, we find the y-intercept, we plug in a 0. To find the x-intercept, we plug in a 0 for y, so we put a 0 in place of that. 2x plus 3 times 0 equals 6. Solve it down to 2x equals 6, and then divide by 2 to get x equals 3. So that is our x-intercept point. This is where the line will cross the x-axis. Do the same thing for the y-intercept, the y-axis. Plug in a 0 for x. 2 times 0 plus 3y equals 6. So 3y equals 6 divided by 3, we get y is equal to 2. So at the point of 0, 2 is where we'll also cross a line. And then we can connect those lines using a line. Or I should, connect those dots. You know what I mean. All right, next one. Graph the line write the equation of the line on the graph. So we kind of go reverse for this one. So where is our y-intercept? Well, we're crossing the y back here at 4. We might eventually cross the x, but we're going to get to that beforehand because we can use the slope. So the y-intercept is 4. And the slope, if you look at this, rise over run, we're actually going down 2. So that's -2 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right. So -2/5 is our slope. And we can build our equation as such. Y equals -2/5 x plus 4. We talk about horizontal lines. These are ones with slope equals 0. They're going to cross the y-axis, and they're just going to kind of keep going. So it's going to be in the form of y equals c, where c is some kind of number. For example, if I say y equals -4, we'll have a horizontal line going across, crossing the y-axis at -4. Similar concept for graphing vertical lines. Vertical lines always cross the x-axis, and they're always in the form of x equals c, where c is some kind of value of some number. If we were to graph, say, x equals 5, we would have a vertical line running through the 5 on the x-axis. So this lesson is all about graphing different kinds of lines, using the tools that we have regarding calculating out formulas for slope and for the y-intercept, and solving to draw and diagram our lines. So please review the lesson 300 to 310. I gave you a real quick synopsis here in my lecture notes. The homework is on 310 to 313, and it's pretty pick and choose. I didn't want you to have to do too many, but I did want you to have an adequate amount of practice. So make sure you write down the numbers. Also remember, this is lesson 6.7. So at the top, make sure you put 6.7. Graph paper is going to be in the back of the room. I'm just printing off of the computer a couple different variations of graph paper. The biggie is, please label your graphs very well so that I can go through and check them as I'm looking over your homework. Take time, figure out what your units need to be to make your graph fit, and make sure you're using a straight edge. I'll have straight edges in the front of the room that you can use to help graph. That's it. If you have any questions about the assignment, please let me know.